A Fox News alert breaking ahead of this week's G20 summit. The U.S. confirming North Korea did just successfully test fire its first intercontinental ballistic missile, one that could reach the U.S. Russia and China now pushing for the U.S. to sign onto China's de-escalation plan for that region. The developments unfolding days before President Trump's first meeting with Russian President Putin at the G20. Bill Bennett, a member of both the Reagan and Bush administrations, weighed in on that meeting earlier on Fox and Friends.
It'll be straightforward and candid. They'll talk about Syria. They'll talk about common ground, interests, common ground. I expect the president will raise this. He has little reticence.
Joining us now, Michael Starr Hopkins, a Democratic strategist, and Evan Siegfried, author of GOP GPS and a GOP strategist. Gentlemen, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us, and happy Independence Day.
Happy Independence Day to both of you. This is a pretty big development when it comes to North Korea, the fact that feasibly there could be a missile that could actually hit American shores and then it could hit Alaska. And now we're getting word that the president seems to have a pretty different stance from what they're calling for, from what Russia and China are calling for de-escalation. He said last week that the era of strategic patience has failed. Patience is over. Michael, do you think the president is doing enough?
No, I don't. And I think this is kind of the worry that everyone's had leading up to this, that at some point there would be an international crisis, and that when you have a president who is more concerned with, being a celebrity and tweeting out and things like that, that when it comes time for an international crisis, he won't be prepared. And it seems like when dealing with North Korea, he hasn't really done his homework. I think that's something that all Americans, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, should be concerned about.
Now, the president did tweet a response, Evan. I want to bring you in. He said, really kind of pushing back on China and calling out to China to put a heavy move on North Korea. We're not exactly sure what he meant by that, but that is what he has done. He's kind of started to put even more pressure on China. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I think as a critic of President Trump, he's doing everything exactly right in this situation. The president has recognized that since the early 90s, no approach has worked, be it Republican or Democrat or any country, in dealing with North Korea. Now we have Kim Jong-un, who staked the entire legitimacy of his regime on developing the nuclear arsenal of North Korea. And now he has basically created the greatest nuclear crisis since the Cuban Missile Crisis. What President Trump is doing and preparing the ground for is to sanction not North Korea itself, but any company that provides any economic benefit to the North Korean people, as well as governments. It's how you can actually leverage it and get people to stop aiding this regime. Under the old way we've done it, we've said we're going to have sanctions through the UN, but those are toothless because there's no enforcement mechanism. Additionally, the South Koreans even undercut it by providing economic aid. Since from 1991 to 2015, the South Koreans gave $7 billion to the North Koreans while we were sanctioning them for bad behavior. It completely undercut it and empowered the regime.
But this is the same president who criticized the Obama administration for attempting to sanction North Korea. We've tried sanctions, and that hasn't
They're not sanctioning North Korea. I called for sanctioning companies, be they Chinese
we've had
or
intense sanctions with North Korea.
On North Korea.
Shifting just a look ahead, the G20 just around the corner. We'll see all these world leaders together. It'll be a first chance for President Trump to meet with President Putin, and also he'll be meeting again with President Xi from China. Now, there was a very warm meeting between the two leaders at Mar-a-Lago. Now things have changed a little bit. This is a big change in the peninsula with what's happened in North Korea, no doubt the seriousness there. Do you think this will be a more frosty meeting, and can he continue to put pressure on China, and could it be effective?
I think he will put pressure on China. It'll be interesting to see with some of the comments that campaign Trump said about China and with our trade policies, how that's going to work now that we need China when it comes to North Korea. But I think the more important issue with the G20 is whether or not Trump's going to bring up the hacking of the elections, the hacking of our democracy with President Putin. He's going in unprepared. He said he has no plan really about what conversation is going to be had. And that should terrify everyone, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, because last time he went unprepared into a meeting, we ended up giving classified information over to the Russians about Israel. So, I really hope that he'll stay off Twitter, that he'll do his homework and prepare himself for these meetings.
There's so much ground to cover when you go to a summit like this, and certainly a lot of competing interests among these countries. So what can the president do there? It's not just a meeting with the president of China, but also the president of Russia coming up. And Japan has called on Russia and China to do more. So does the American president have the ability to pressure these nations to get in on this and to work on this as a worldwide problem?
Yes, the president has two big problems that he needs to work with the international community on, and he can sit down with Vladimir Putin on North Korea and Syria. We clearly are not seeing eye to eye on either of those, but we can at least start laying the groundwork to find common ground. It would be very successful if President Trump were to use his threat of tariffs and protectionist economic policy to leverage China to play more fairly and to be more fair to the American people, as well as the economic and world community. China has been manipulating its currency and harming the rest of the world at its own benefit, as well as expanding into Africa, the Caribbean, Central America, and trying to even put a military base 180 miles off the United States.